I'm sorry to say this, but nobody knows who you are. They can hear your name, they can't see you. If I say something stupid on television tonight, people know it's me saying it. If you do, with all due respect, you can disappear and no one knows.
You are about to see Douglas Murray, the ever-articulate commentator, take on a group of Muslim scholars and activists, leaving them speechless. Douglas Murray is a writer and commentator known for his sharp wit and unflinching honesty. He also engages in discussions that many shy away from. Facing him is a panel of Muslim scholars and activists ready to defend their stance on the niqab. Douglas Murray kicks off the debate with the precision and intensity of a judge on a double espresso. He argues for the necessity of banning the niqab in public places, particularly highlighting courtrooms where transparency and facial recognition are paramount.
Douglas Murray, would you like to see the veil banned here?
Well, I think like a majority of British people, I think that it should be banned in public places, particularly places like courtrooms, where it's absolutely imperative that a jury are able to see.
Douglas hits the nail on the head here. Imagine a courtroom where everyone wears masks. It'd be like a bank heist movie, but with less excitement and more paperwork. The importance of facial recognition in legal settings cannot be overstated. It's about transparency and accountability. Douglas continues to emphasize the societal need for openness, which is fundamentally compromised when faces are hidden. This isn't about infringing on religious freedoms, but about ensuring fairness and clarity in critical public institutions.
As for an overall ban, I think, look, my own opinion is that niqab is highly undesirable. I think that we live in a society where people do show their faces, where huge amounts of our social interaction depend.
Think about it. Our social fabric relies on facial cues. It is how we communicate, build trust, and connect with one another. Imagine trying to have a meaningful conversation with someone who might as well be a mannequin. Facial expressions are a crucial part of how we understand and relate to one another. Facial visibility is crucial, not just in courtrooms, but in schools, hospitals, and other public spaces where trust and communication are vital. Imagine a teacher trying to engage with students or a doctor diagnosing a patient without seeing their face. It is impractical and hinders effective interaction.
Discourage its wearing.
Difficult to impose a ban, but in principle you'd like to see one because you think in Britain it's unacceptable.
In public buildings, in courts, in schools and places like this, absolutely, I think a ban would be very sensible. In streets and so on, I think it's difficult, but it should be societally discouraged.
Douglas is on point again. It's not about policing what people wear on the streets, but there is a valid argument for discouraging practices that hinder social cohesion. We rely on seeing each other's faces, not just for legal reasons, but for everyday social interactions. It is how we form bonds and build a sense of community. One of the Muslim scholars steps up with an argument that seems to stretch the limits of logic. She suggests that because the niqab is familiar in East London, it should naturally be accepted across the entire nation.
You know, the people who have actually interacted with women who wear the face veil, people who work with them, I mean, we're in East London today. In East London, the veil is practically, normal on the streets of East London. People who've actually interacted and worked with women who wear the veil have absolutely no problem with it.
His argument is akin to saying, I've seen a squirrel before, so everyone should be comfortable with squirrels in their living rooms. Just because a specific area has normalized something doesn't mean it should be universally accepted. It is a classic case of mistaking local norms for universal. The scholar seems to forget that societal norms vary widely across regions. What works in one community may not be suitable for another, especially in a diverse country like Britain. More so, societal acceptance is not a one-size-fits-all deal. It's more nuanced than that. The comfort of a few does not dictate the comfort of the many. Muslim scholars in the room tries to shift the blame for public discomfort with the niqab onto hijabs as if they are the root cause of societal unease.
56% of people are saying they don't want it here.
You know what? I'm not surprised at all, because when you know that high-profile politicians making such offensive comments and big fuss about it. I am not
Douglas
surprised
Murray
when
is
the
right.
public
In
say
British
they are against
society,
it.
Blaming politicians for public sentiment is like blaming weathermen for the rain. Politicians reflect societal concerns. They do not create them out of thin air. It is a deflection tactic that doesn't address the core issues at hand. Politicians may amplify public concerns, but they do not manufacture them. Societal sentiments often stem from deeper, more complex issues than a few speeches. It is easy to point fingers at politicians, but societal discomfort with the niqab has roots that go beyond political rhetoric. About visibility, integration, and the clash between modernity and tradition. Her argument overlooks the genuine concerns people have about integration and societal cohesion. High-profile comments may spark discussions, but the underlying issues are much more ingrained. In a twist of irony, she attempts to defend the niqab by appealing to British values of freedom and openness. Yes, you heard that right. Openness.
The fabric of the British society is respecting the public freedom.
We are
and
British.
Public freedom is part of it, the religious freedom.
what
So
about the
I've got
fact
the
that
right
people
to
feel
practice.
uneasy? They said they don't know how to relate to women who have their faces covered.
First of all, let them interact with us. Let us be open and engaging with them.
The argument is like trying to sell sunglasses to a blind person. Claiming that wearing a niqab promotes openness and engagement is paradoxical at best. It's hard to interact openly when half your face is covered and you are essentially anonymous. The scholar then attempts to downplay the importance of face-to-face communication by citing the prevalence of digital interactions.
Secondly, 80% of communication in the world does not involve face-to-face.
What?
Twitter,
Yasmin Al-Brown,
Twitter,
I mean,
Facebook, phones
excuse me,
doesn't involve
this is
face-to-face
just- I'm sorry.
communications.
Her argument is like saying, we don't need to see each other's faces because we have emojis. Sure, digital communication is significant, but it doesn't replace the need for face-to-face interaction in building trust and understanding. You cannot read someone's true emotions through a text or tweet. Imagine having a serious conversation with someone whose facial expressions you cannot see. It's like playing poker without ever seeing your opponent's face. Good luck figuring out their next move. The scholar argues that the issue is one of problematization, suggesting that the discomfort around the niqab is an artificially created problem.
The issue is the problemization here. It's not existent problem.
Saying the niqab isn't an existent problem is like saying the rain isn't wet. It dismisses the very real feelings of unease that many people experience. Discomfort isn't manufactured out of thin air. It is a genuine response to a tangible situation. Ignoring these sentiments won't make them disappear. Yasmin Al-Brown, a journalist with years of experience in this field, steps in to counter the scholar's points with a dose of reality.
I worked in this area for 7 years, about 15 years ago, and this was not, as you said, a norm. This has been imported and exported for reasons which we haven't got time to go into. We live in a society, in this society, and we live in a country which is very, very complicated. And to shut yourself off as if the rest of us are infections.
Yasmin delivers a masterclass in debunking myths with facts. She points out that the niqab is not a traditional norm, but an imported practice, challenging the scholar's narrative. Her analogy of shutting oneself off as if others are infectious is spot on. It vividly illustrates the divisiveness that the niqab can create. It is not about demonizing the practice, but recognizing its impact on social cohesion. Yasmin also has a strong stance against the French ban of the niqab, advocating instead for a non-racist, universal approach to public visibility.
I don't believe in the French ban. I don't think you should do that.
But why not?
Absolutely.
If you're opposed to it,
no,
if you
I think there is a
it's-
very simple way of saying, and a non-racist way of saying, in public institutions, everybody, whoever they are, must show their faces.
Yasmin's approach is refreshingly straightforward. She's essentially saying, let's not single anyone out. Let's have one rule for everyone. It's like the golden rule of fairness. If everyone follows the same guidelines, there is less room for resentment or accusations of bias. It is about creating a level playing field where everyone can see and be seen, fostering trust and transparency. She also touches on the issue of Muslim exceptionalism, pointing out that creating different rules for different groups can lead to division rather than unity.
It's Muslim exceptionalism that is becoming the problem.
No, it's
if
not.
we have the same rule for everybody, and at home, on the streets, I don't want people stopped.
Exceptionalism can indeed be a slippery slope. It's like saying, you have to play by these rules, but you don't. This can breed frustration and division within society. Yasmin's call for universal rules is a plea for consistency and equality, ensuring that no group feels either unfairly targeted or given undue privileges. The Muslim scholar responds by emphasizing the accommodation of religious expressions in Britain, comparing the niqab to other religious practices.
Accommodate religious expression in this country. You know, Jehovah's Witnesses who don't want blood transfusions, Sikh people who want to wear turbans. We make exceptions, you know, in certain situations. And so, look, you know, I really want to reach out to the public and say, you've got nothing to fear from us.
She brings up a valid point about religious accommodation. Britain prides itself on being a tolerant and inclusive society. However, comparing the niqab to other religious practices doesn't quite hit the mark. While wearing a turban or refusing a blood transfusion is a personal choice that doesn't affect public interaction, the niqab directly impacts face-to-face communication, which is foundational to social cohesion. The scholar continues to stress that Britain's tradition of religious tolerance should extend to the niqab, suggesting that fears around it are unfounded.
Look, you know, I really want to reach out to the public and say, you've got nothing to fear from us.
But take
We're
up
British.
Yasmin's-
I was born in this
take up
country. I
Yasmin's
love this
point.
country.
Fatima's heartfelt plea is touching, but it skirts around the core issue of visibility and interaction. While it's wonderful to embrace diversity, it is equally important to address the genuine discomfort and practical challenges that arise from the niqab. It is not about fear, but about maintaining open lines of communication in the lives on visibility. The debate moderator refocuses the conversation on Yasmin's point about exceptionalism, promoting scholar to reiterate the importance of religious expression.
Take up Yasmin Alibhai-Brown's point about this is about exceptionalism.
We accommodate, don't we, in this country, and in my country, Britain, we accommodate religious expression, and we do make exceptions for people.
Fatima's insistence on accommodation reflects a deeper commitment to religious freedom. However, Yasmin's counterpoint about exceptionalism remains valid. Making exceptions can sometimes lead to unintended divisions. It's like having different rules for different players in a game. It just doesn't create a fair playing field. Doug highlight the crucial role of social interaction and the importance of facial visibility in building trust and understanding.
As a Muslim.
Yeah.
But let's just add one thing to this, if I may. The issue of social interaction is very important, and not just to me, but obviously to a majority of the British people.
Yeah.
What I say tonight, what Yasmin says and other people say tonight, people see our faces, they know who said it.
Douglas brings the discussion back to the heart of the matter: social interaction. It's about being able to connect with others, to see and be seen. In a society where communication is key, visibility becomes essential. It's not about infringing on religious freedoms, but about ensuring that everyone can engage openly and honestly. He also highlights a critical issue. The niqab can serve as a mask that absolves one of responsibility. He points out the importance of accountability in public discourse.
I'm sorry to say this, but nobody knows who you are. They can hear your name, they can't see you. If I say something stupid on television tonight, people know it's me saying it. If you do, with all due respect, you can disappear and no one knows.
Douglas underscores that visibility ensures accountability. In a world where actions have consequences, being able to disappear behind a niqab undermines this principle. Without being seen, individuals can evade the consequences of their words and actions. He also asked a critical question, pointing out the social ramifications of wearing the niqab and how it might exacerbate differences within society.
The question is whether or not, and I would ask this of I think of everyone in the room who's covered, do you think that by covering your face from everyone else in society, you are exacerbating difference or making it less bad?
Douglas doesn't mince words here. He is essentially asking if hiding behind a veil bridges or widens the gap between communities. It's a fair question. If half the population wore masks all the time, would it bring us closer or create a sense of otherness? It's like going to a masquerade ball and never taking off the mask. Eventually, you forget who's behind it. A Muslim scholar responds by bringing up human rights, emphasizing freedoms enshrined in international conventions, but seems to miss Douglas's core question about social cohesion.
First and foremost, I think we need to look at human rights, okay? In 1998, there was the Human Rights Convention, okay? Under Article 9, it specifically says we all have the freedom of expression, we have the freedom of belief, we have the freedom of so many things that...
The scholar's response feels like a dodge. While it is crucial to protect human rights, Douglas is asking about the social cohesions of the niqab. It's like arguing about the right to dance in a library without addressing the disruption it causes. Douglas bluntly points out the absurdity of invoking modern human rights language while being completely veiled.
Look, can I just point out, there is something fundamentally ludicrous about somebody dressed as you are talking the language of modern human rights.
Absolutely.
What's a bit
Fundamentally ludicrous.
Douglas doesn't hold back. He is essentially saying, how can you preach transparency while hidden behind a curtain? It's like a ventriloquist arguing for open dialogue. It just doesn't add up. An Islamic lecturer chimes in, emphasizing the balance between rights and responsibilities, echoing Douglas's concerns.
This lady is constantly talking about rights. As a Muslim, you should know that responsibility is there as well. You have a responsibility to society around you.
The lecturer brings a crucial perspective. Rights come with responsibilities. Imagine if everyone focused solely on their rights without considering the impact on others. It'd be like driving without looking at road signs. Chaos would ensue. The debate moderator underscores the point about societal responsibility, trying to bring the discussion back to balance. Another Muslim activist among the audience argues that fear and ignorance are the real issues, advocating for better mutual understanding.
As British citizens, we do understand them. We were raised in British schools. Some of us go to university here, we work here. We understand the British culture, but do you really understand the Islamic culture?
The activist makes a fair point about mutual understanding, but it skirts around Douglas's core question. It's like saying, if only everyone had a PhD in cultural studies, there'd be no problems. The real issue is visibility and integration. Yasmin brings historical context into the conversation, pointing out the struggles for women's rights and how practices like the niqab can feel words.
My mother's generation, they were beaten, bullied and burnt because they wanted to get rid of all of this and be seen as proper equals. You're betraying that history. And this country fought for women's rights. And you've now taken us back to the...
Yasmin's perspective is powerful. She's reminding everyone of the hard-fought battles for equality and how reintroducing restrictive practices can undermine those gains. It's like climbing a mountain only to slide back down, frustrating and counterproductive. Douglas delivers a piercing question about the flexibility of the niqab, challenging the consistency of its supposed necessity.
How is it, to ask, you all here, how is it that you say it's an absolutely fundamental, you have to wear it, it's a right, it's a necessity upon you, but yet you say you go through an airport and it doesn't matter if you lift it? Is it so negotiable? In France, many of the women who said we cannot go out if we don't wear it.
Douglas' question strikes at the heart of the debate. If the niqab is truly non-negotiable, why can't it be lifted in certain situations like airport security? It's like saying a seatbelt is essential, except when it's uncomfortable. Douglas and Yasmin's arguments highlight the importance of visibility and consistency in public discourse and social Their points underscore the necessity by balancing individual freedoms with societal responsibilities. The debate reminds us that while personal freedoms are important, they must be balanced with the needs of society. It's like having a buffet. Everyone can enjoy their favorite dishes, but there is a common table and shared rules to keep things harmonious. Their insights emphasize that maintaining a cohesive society requires everyone to consider not just their rights, but also their responsibilities to the community. It's about finding that sweet spot where individual freedoms and societal norms intersect harmoniously.